Hello and welcome to BBC Learning Zone Through the Night on BBC Two. And coming up from now through until 6 a.m, we've got programmes for schools. And it's 4 hours of history today. At 4 a.m, we look at how much life changed in Britain between 1750 and 1900, exploring migration, crime, health and housing, work and reform. Before that, we look at the period between 1906 and 1918, a time of huge social change recorded by photojournalists.
Welcome to History File. Tonight's unit begins with Britain 1906 to 1918, focusing on the changing social patterns of this period through the work of the pioneers of photojournalism. We then go back in time to Britain 1500 to 1750, a series of innovative programmes helping students to develop skills of inquiry by visiting sites of historical significance.
In the summer of 1914, a photographer called Horace Nichols went to Henley in Berkshire for the annual regatta on the River Thames. The pictures he took there show Edwardian Britain in the years before the First World War, as it's often remembered, as a time of calm and tranquility, bathed in sunlight, a golden age. And that nostalgic vision seems all the more poignant because waiting round the corner was tragedy. Within a matter of weeks, Europe would be split apart in the worst conflict the world had ever known. Within months, many of the young men in these photographs would be dead. But how truthful was that interpretation of pre-war life as recorded by Horace Nichols? How much was this, as some people later fondly recalled, a golden age? This documentary uses photographs from the period to take a snapshot of Edwardian Britain.
My name's Simon Roberts, and I'm a photojournalist. What I do is I use a camera like a journalist uses words. I use it to tell stories. My job is to capture moments in time, moments that say something about how I see the world. If I get it right, the image I take strikes a chord. It resonates. The more honest the photograph, for me, the better it is. In this documentary, I've been asked to follow in the footsteps of the very first photojournalists, the pioneers of my profession. Just like me, they used the camera to record the world around them. And to do that, they made choices. Choices about what to shoot, how to frame the image, when exactly to take the shot. Unpack the choices they made, and you come to understand how they saw their world. First off, I'm following in the footsteps of Horace Nichols. In my opinion, he was the most brilliant photojournalist of his generation.
Horace Walter Nichols had cut his teeth as a war photographer in South Africa, chronicling the struggle between British soldiers and the Boers, independent-minded farmers in this remote British colony. But at the war's end, in 1902, Nichols had returned to England, determined to make his way as a freelance photojournalist. And for his subject, he'd chosen England's upper classes at play. Royal Ascot, the Derby, the Henley Regatta, Goodwood, Lords, the summer season in all its glory.
This was the place Nichols loved to be best of all. This is Goodwood in the racing season. Nichols came here almost every summer from 1906 to 1914. And if you could sum up in one word the mood he captured at the races, that word would be confidence. His pictures show a society oozing confidence. These people are rich, they're happy, they're in control. You get the sense that these people are the rulers of the world, and they know it.
Britain at the turn of the 20th century was a nation at its peak, the most powerful country in the world. Under Queen Victoria, the British Empire had spread across the globe. Britain controlled Australia, India, vast sections of Africa. In 1901, Victoria had died. Her successor, Edward VII, was a new kind of king for a new kind of century. His lifestyle quite different from that of his more austere parents. He loved gambling, shooting. He loved chic clothes and romantic affairs. Most of all, he loved racing. His horse won the Derby 3 times, the Grand National once. His mood of infectious frivolity seemed to ignite British society.
His Majesty is in so many respects a typical Englishman. And that is a character which can only be fully attained by one in sympathy with that love of sport, which is almost a passion with all ranks and classes in this country.
One of the things I admire about Nichols is that he was a pioneer. He was right at the cutting edge of a new medium. To do my job, I need a camera light enough to keep me mobile and film stock fast enough to capture movement. But for Nichols, all this was new technology. His father was a photographer too, but his works were all posed. The subjects had to sit still because Victorian cameras needed such lengthy exposures. In those early days, if the subject moved, all you got was a blur. But Nichols worked with one of these, a Newman and Gardner Reflex 1903 state of the art. Still pretty cumbersome, but the shutter speed was fast. It meant he could capture action like never before. Human interaction, human expression. And the best thing about his Gardner was that the lens pointed sideways, so he could take photographs without people realizing. I think what Nichols wanted to capture most of all was a sense of communal pleasure. Look at this. Everyone focused on the action. Everyone watching the race with the same expressions of hope and excitement. And it's not just the rich in their top hats. He captured the middle class in their bowlers, the working class in their flat caps. It's as if he wanted to show a world of opportunity for all, of good times for all.
At the turn of the 20th century, British life was changing fast. An increasingly urban population, an increasingly consumer society, increasing numbers of lower middle class white-collar workers, clerks, shop assistants, with the modest means to buy into the new prosperity. The old gospel of mass work was being challenged by a new gospel of mass enjoyment. Wherever you looked, there were temptations on your time and purse.
Everything new to buy, it seems, becomes a kind of necessity. People see others riding the trams. They want to do so themselves, at least once in a while, however low their wage. Every feature of our advancing civilization feeds their desire. You can see others taking a holiday into the countryside or to the seaside without wanting to do the same.
The thing is, though, When I look at the work of Horace Nichols, I don't see so much the things that bring people together, I see people divided. A shot like this, for instance, he gives the gypsy woman such dignity. But the fact is, this kind of familiarity between rich and poor was rare. The top hats had one enclosure, the flat caps had another. It's unusual even to see them in the same picture. The rich ate their sumptuous lunches, waited on by servants. At the end of the day, the poor were let in through the gates to gather up the scraps. Nichols called this picture crumbs from a rich man's table. Sometimes he'd make photo montages. He'd take bits of one picture and combine it with bits from another, like this layering of umbrellas at the Derby. But his montages weren't just for visual effect. He wanted to show the different levels in Edwardian society. This one shows Ascot with a gypsy encampment superimposed in the foreground. On one level, this picture's a lie. The scene never existed. On another level, it shows a kind of truth. Because, you study the photographs, the Edwardian world was a world of contrasts, a world of divisions, a world of rich and poor. This image was taken by another pioneer of Edwardian photography. His name was John Galt, and he used the camera in quite a different way to Horace Nichols. For him, it wasn't a means to celebrate society, it was a weapon with which to record and campaign against social injustice.
Unlike Horace Nichols, John Galt wasn't strictly speaking a photojournalist. He didn't sell his images to the press. Photography wasn't even his livelihood. He came from Elgin in Aberdeenshire, but in the 1890s he had moved south from Scotland to work with the London City Mission, a Christian organisation working with the urban poor. His first beat was Bethnal Green, then Poplar. Each day he walked the streets of London's East End spreading the word. Each night he wrote up what he saw in his official mission diary.
Poverty is very acute in my district. I was making visits from door to door a few weeks ago in a short street containing only 12 houses. I saw 6 families in a state of semi-starvation. There was one house shared by 2 families. The husband's out of work, no food, no fire, children crying.